Story time about how I lied to my parents about having a boyfriend for 4 years. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My parents are super strict. Growing up, I could not have any guy friends. I wasn't even allowed to go over to my girlfriends' houses. At school, I was pretty popular, and the fact that my parents didn't let me have any boyfriends made the boys actually want me more, which is something my dad actually hated. Boys would call our house asking to talk to me, and my dad would grill me about it. So I finally decided to tell him that because he doesn't let me date any boys, that boys want me more. He laughed and said that that wasn't true, and that most likely I was just provoking these boys. Obviously, this really upset me. My dad was always really controlling. When I turned 16, I decided I wanted to get my own job. This way I could have some more freedom and just meet more people outside of school. I started working at a local restaurant and quickly made friends with everyone who was working there. They were all pretty much my age, especially one boy. Let's call him Rick. Rick and I hit it off right away. I had a huge crush on him instantly, and I could tell that he liked me too. But of course, my strict parents were always present in my mind, so I tried my best to stay away from Rick just so that I wouldn't develop any feelings. Which I already had, who am I kidding? One day, Rick asked me if I wanted to take my break with him, and I said yes. He sat in his car for 30 minutes and just talked the entire time. I started falling in love with him. We talked so much, and he was so kind and so funny. The next few days at work, we were basically inseparable. Finally, at the end of the week, he asked me if I wanted to be his girlfriend, and I said yes. Without a moment of hesitation, I said yes, knowing that my parents would not want that at all. So here's when I told him that we needed to keep this a secret. He wanted to just speak to my parents, but I begged him not to. Thankfully, he understood. The only time we were able to spend together was at work. And we did this for a full year. When I turned 17, my parents insisted that I quit my job so that I could focus on school. I pretty much had to listen to them, so I did. This meant that Rick and I barely ever saw each other. Instead, I decided to sneak him into my house every single night. Part 2 is up. So I started sneaking my boyfriend into my room every single night. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My parents had literally no idea. I snuck my boyfriend Rick into my room every single night for a full year. The only time we ever got close to getting caught, the smoke alarm in our house went off, and as soon as we heard it, Rick jumped out through my window. My room was on the first floor, so this wasn't really an issue at all. I finally graduated from high school and started going to college. It became way easier to hide my relationship from my parents because I was living in a dorm. Rick would come visit me every single weekend, and my parents would come to visit me every now and then. Even when I was in college, you guys, my parents were still super strict. So one day I decided to ask my dad when I could have a boyfriend. He said when I was living under my own roof and paying my own bills. So the following year, that's exactly what I did. I was able to get a good job in my field, and so did Rick. So we put our money together and his parents helped us to get an apartment. But here's the thing, I didn't want my parents to know that I had a boyfriend this whole time. So instead, I told them that Rick was my roommate who I met in college, and that I finally just decided that I wanted my own freedom. My dad was really proud of me for taking the initiative, which was crazy to me. He said he was proud of me. My mom, on the other hand, definitely did not want me moving in with some guy. So I invited Rick over to my parents' house. They met him for a little bit and they actually liked him. Fast forward 6 years, Rick and I are married, and my parents don't know that he was my boyfriend for 4 years. They think that we started dating after we moved in together. I kind of want to tell my parents, but I'm not sure. I think they would get really upset and possibly not speak to me. What do you think I should do? Story time about how I caught my mom hooking up with my guy best friend. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My best friend and I have known each other for 7 years. Let's call him Mark. Mark and I met when we were in school, and we have been inseparable since then. Everyone's constantly telling us that we should date, but we're not into each other like that. Last year, my parents started fighting a lot because my dad found out that my mom cheated on him. And she cheated on him with my dad's best friend. My mom's the kind of woman that constantly seeks attention from men. And growing up, she weirdly competed with me. Like anytime I liked a boy, she would flirt with him in front of me. So yeah, my mom's not the best when it comes to stuff like that. So when my dad found out that my mom was cheating on him, I basically just wanted to keep the peace. And I convinced my dad to not get a divorce. Huge mistake. Fast forward to 2 months ago. Mark was just about to turn 20, so I had been planning a birthday party for him. Because of COVID, I was only inviting our immediate family and close friends. And of course, my mom had to interject and wanted to help me plan everything. I told her several times I didn't need her help, but she insisted. Let me just say this, before any of this happened, it never occurred to me that my mom was even attracted to Mark. I saw him as like a brother to me, so I assumed that she would see him the same way. My mom and dad kept arguing every single day. Mark would come over and he would just let me vent to him. The day of Mark's birthday party is when I started noticing some weird things. My mom, of course, had to drink a lot of champagne, so she was getting a little tipsy. She insisted on dancing with Mark and like making this big scene, so they started dancing. More people joined the dance floor and it became like a real party. A few hours later, I see my mom and Mark sitting on the couch, but my mom is crying her eyeballs out, complaining about my dad, and Mark is just there listening to her. I mean, she's putting him in a weird position. I literally had to peel my mom off of Mark and take her home and put her into bed. Thankfully, Mark just thought it was funny, so he didn't get upset. A few weeks later, I come home and find Mark in the kitchen with my mom. Once again, my mom is drinking and complaining about my dad. And once again, Mark is just listening to her. But here's the thing. My mom was standing there in a bikini, supposedly ready to get in the pool. Part 2 is So my mom is standing there in a bikini trying to seduce my guy best friend. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I sent me on Instagram. I asked my mom nicely to go put on some clothes and she refused. So I grabbed Mark's hand and told him to come upstairs with me. I asked him what was going on between him and my mom and he said nothing. And he even said that I was ridiculous for even suggesting something like that. And I believed him, so I let it go. A few days later, my mom is dressed up all sexy in a red tight dress, supposedly making breakfast for my dad and I. But my dad had already left for work, and I was going to school, so she knew that. I had the feeling that she had Mark coming over and she didn't want me to know. So I got in my car and told her I was leaving for school. Instead, I waited around the corner and I saw Mark driving up to the house. I waited for about 10 minutes and then I quietly pulled into the driveway and opened the door. And what do you know? My mom is sitting on the countertop making out with my guy best friend. And they were going at it. Like if I hadn't gotten there, it would have happened, you know? I slammed the door and my mom jumps off the counter. Mark pretends that nothing's wrong and tells me that he has to go to school. But of course, I didn't let him leave. That's when my mom told me that they were in love. And what do you know? Mark confirmed it. That's when my mom basically begged me not to tell my dad anything and that her and Mark were going to continue seeing each other. I told my mom I'd keep the secret, but instead, I drove straight to my dad's job and told him everything. He went straight to his lawyer and filed for divorce. When he confronted her, my mom basically said that I was lying and that I had for some reason made everything up. Mark, on the other hand, is totally in love with her, but she's telling him to leave her alone. So she also broke his heart. He doesn't even want to go back to school, and he's begging me to get my mom and him back together. I told him that that would never happen because my mom is never going to leave my dad. My dad makes a lot of money, and she has no job. He provides her a lifestyle that Mark could never. Now, here's the thing. My mom's accusing me of being a terrible daughter for telling my dad, but how could I not tell my dad? I mean, am I the asshole here? I doubt it, but what do you guys think? What should I do?
Am I the asshole for telling my girlfriend that I don't like the gift she got me and asking for something else? My girlfriend, 22 female, and I, 26 male, have been together for almost 4 years. We live together and she has a stable career and has bought herself a car and was taught to drive in school. I was never taught to drive and it's not really necessary because I can Uber, take the bus, or my girlfriend can drive. She's offered to teach me, but I declined because I'm not interested in learning and I don't plan on getting a car because they're a lot of money. My birthday was yesterday and my girlfriend was really excited to give me my gift. It was private driving lessons, which probably cost her hundreds and hundreds of dollars. I was really offended because I don't want to learn to drive. She hyped it up like I love it, but I hate it and it seems more like it's for her. Am I the asshole for telling my girlfriend that I don't like the gift she got me and asking for something else? I was upset and disappointed and she kept asking why I didn't like it. I told her I don't care for driving and it seemed like an impersonal gift because I don't even want my license or a car. I felt like she doesn't even know me. She got upset, so I suggest she returns the lessons and get me something else. She's now calling me an asshole because the lessons are non-refundable and is really upset with me. I've told her I don't want to drive and I feel like she's trying to change me. Now she's being immature and refuses to drive me anywhere and says I can Uber if I want to go somewhere. Even if it's somewhere she's going already. I get Ubers to and from work and have a good job. She said she's tired of always being the driver and likes to be the passenger sometimes.
Am I wrong for wanting a painting made by my late sister in my house, even though it triggers my husband, who's her widower? I, 34 female, had one sibling who was 25 when she passed. She died in a car crash just 3 months after her wedding. It has now been 12 years since her passing. We were very close and more like best friends and then sisters. My now husband, 38 male, Adam, was a constant presence in my family's lives even after her death, as he would visit my parents regularly and they dote on him very much. 5 years ago, we started getting close and got married 2 years later. My sister used paint as a hobby and had left behind 8 paintings. My parents took 2 for themselves, I took 3, and my parents gave away the rest to her close friends, and they offered Adam to take any he wanted, but he refused. I really liked the 3 paintings and displayed them in my apartment proudly before getting together with Adam, as I felt closer to my sister, but once we became a thing, the paintings seemed to upset him, so I kept them in a storage instead. I understand everyone grieves differently, and for Adam, anything associated with her triggers him, and he goes back to that awful day when he found out she was gone. We have no pictures of her at our house or any memento left by her. All this time I've been understanding, but I feel like I've completely erased her from my life and brought up the subject of displaying one painting to commemorate her in our house the other day. Adam shut the idea down immediately and refused to even hear my side. I was hurt by this as I've been considerate to him all these years, but he didn't even think to consider my feelings about the situation. It worsened when I suggested grief counseling together today, which made him even more upset. He wasn't yelling, but he was clearly distraught by me continuing the subject. He said he already went through grief counseling and my insistence is just opening old wounds. I was angry at the time and told him why did he ever consider marrying me when the thought of her makes him this upset and knowing how much she meant to me. He told me he can't handle me or this conversation anymore and went to his brothers to cool off as he doesn't want to say anything he'll regret later. Now all alone I'm thinking I might have taken things too far. So am I wrong here?
Am I the asshole for refusing to apologize to my husband in writing? He said all major family events will be held in our house and in his presence. I freaked and said this is wrong and he should have talked to me first before sending invitations, especially knowing I have other commitments like work and taking care of the house and our son. He said we'll manage if I took time off of work, but that means more workload later and it'd take away from my maternity leave. I demanded he cancel, but he refused, saying over my dead body. He walked out and I sent a mass text to everyone who received an invite explaining that we will not be hosting this year. He found out and called my behavior appalling. He said I broke his word to his family and made him look small and with no authority. I replied that I didn't sign up to host a celebration and accommodate 26 people while pregnant, taking care of a toddler, and working. He's demanding a handwritten apology for canceling the event.